immediately understood the wisdom of her idea. AIPAC is charged with the mission of strengthening the U.S.-Israel relationship because AIPAC believes that strong relations between both countries is in both countries' best interest. That is exactly the mission, the goal of the U.S.-Japan Council vis-a-vis Japan and U.S.-Japanese relationships. AIPAC's major role is to interpret and explain the many events that affect the U.S.-Israel relationship. Doing the same for the U.S.-Japan relationship would be an important activity for the U.S.-Japan Council. The United States is a wonderful country, and the American people reflect the rewards of freedom and democracy. However, in general, the American public is not especially interested in foreign policy. Further, the American public does not understand the cultural differences that exist around the world. All of us interpret the world based on our own experience, and many Americans naively believe that the rest of the world is just the same as the Americans are. Of course, it's not true. Often you will find an American tourist or American tourists experiencing something in a foreign country, and it's not being done the same way it's done in the United States. And the tourist will say, well, that's wrong. They don't mean it's wrong. They mean it's different. A wonderful and humorous point illuminating American naivete in terms of foreign cultural differences is the following true story, excuse me, recounted by Bernard Lewis, the historian who is hailed as the world's foremost Islamic scholar by the Wall Street Journal. Dr. Lewis writes, in 1949, American and Turkish relations were advancing. As a result of those relations at that time, Turkey joined NATO. In 1949, November of 49, President Harry Truman wanted to make a gesture of friendship toward the President of Turkey. He called in his advisors, who naively suggested to him that since Thanksgiving was soon approaching, it might be a gracious and pleasant gesture to present a Thanksgiving turkey to the President of Turkey. Imagine the consternation at the Turkish presidential palace when a large dead bird arrived, delivered by a special courier. Was this an insult? In the United States, we call the bird turkey. In Turkey, they call that same bird the India bird. So it has no relationship to Turkey at all. And while Thanksgiving is well embedded in American culture, it's not part of Turkish culture. And sending a turkey to the President of Turkey because it was Thanksgiving was simply undecipherable in Turkey. Japan has a beautiful culture, thousands of years old. It is generally unknown to the American public. It is extremely important that events which affect the U.S.-Japanese relationship be explained and interpreted in an appropriate way to Americans. The Congress of the United States is one of the best ways to make that message known. It not only represents the American public, it leads the country. It is essential that this body, the members of the Senate and House, understand Japan better. Japan is a very important trading and political partner of the United States. America and Japan are strong allies. It serves the interests of both countries for there to be a better understanding between the two world powers. Educating the Congress is an important step in this process. AIPAC's success in advocating support of the U.S.-Israel relationship is based on the overwhelming support of the American people. According to a recent Rasmussen poll, 71% of Americans rate Israel as an ally. Only Canada and Britain score higher. But this morning you heard the ambassador say that 80% of the American people and the Japanese people like each other. That's very similar in nature to the U.S.-Israel relationship. For AIPAC members who passionately believe that the strong relationship, good morning, Norm, is good for both countries, with pleasure, both countries, working for this cause provides them with a very meaningful activity. Each AIPAC member feels that he or she makes a significant contribution towards strengthening that relationship. Working for a cause that is greater than oneself provides genuine purpose to our lives. It is thrilling for people to work for a noble cause. For more than half a century, AIPAC has worked to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship. From a small public affairs boutique in the 1950s, AIPAC has grown into a more than 100,000 member national grassroots movement, and as Glenn mentioned, the New York Times describes it as the most important organization affecting America's relationship with Israel. Each year, AIPAC is involved in more than 100 legislative and policy initiatives aimed at providing Israel with financial, diplomatic, and military support critical to its security. AIPAC educates candidates for federal office, members of Congress, White House, Pentagon, State Department officials, and other policymakers whose decisions could affect America's policies in the Middle East. AIPAC performs the essential role of educating its members about the issues and how Congress works, so its members can have an intelligent discussion with members of Congress. After mastering the issues, an AIPAC member can meet with a member of Congress and discuss these issues about the relationship between Israel and the United States. American citizens can provide a member of Congress with three things: financial resources, time, and if they happen to be a constituent, the vote, which is pretty important in a representative process. Members of AIPAC are not lobbyists in the pejorative sense because they do their lobbying out of conviction and without pay. Indeed, it costs them money. They spend their own personal money to come to Washington to meet with members. AIPAC's network of 10 regional offices and 8 satellite offices help pro-Israel activists from Miami, Florida to Missoula, Montana learn how they can affect Israel's future by advocating strong U.S.-Israel ties. Exciting educational programs. Don't try and sneak in, Senator. There's a seat right here.
Senator, right here.
Right here. Up front, next to Norm. You're not interrupting. You're a welcome addition. Glenn, would you send a message?
I thought she sent you here.
As I said, AIPAC has regional offices in 10 locations and 8 satellite offices all year long. Exciting educational programs take place throughout the year. Leading members of Congress, policymakers, and top analysts lead these meetings. AIPAC can also be found on hundreds of campuses, teaching students how to answer Israel's detractors and how to use their political involvement to build support for Israel among their campus leaders. Some of the major topics with which AIPAC is concerned include promoting peace, ensuring that Israel receives critical aid, stopping the proliferation of dangerous weapons, guaranteeing America stands with Israel in the world arena, strengthening the U.S.-Israel military and intelligence alliance, fighting terrorism. AIPAC's annual conference is a life-changing event that attracts pro-Israel activists from all 50 states. It is a 3-day event held here in Washington. Members come at their own expense and pay to attend the conference. At the last conference in March of this year, more than 7,500 delegates attended. Of special note were the 1,300 students who were fully engaged to see, and it was always something that speakers remarked about, seeing this large number of young people in the audience. 213 student government presidents from all 50 states were there, 50 pastors and 200 rabbis. Delegates participate in a jam-packed day, 3 days of programming featuring addresses by America and Israel's top leaders, along with scores of workshops and breakout sessions led by senior experts in their fields. Presidents Bush and Clinton, many secretaries of state, distinguished senators, Israeli prime ministers Netanyahu, Olmert, Sharon, Barak, Peres, Rabin, Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel are only some of the luminaries who have keynoted this event. A highlight of the event is the gala banquet, which draws nearly half of the Senate, a third of the House of Representatives, scores of administration officials, diplomats, and as I've said, student leaders from across the country. Attendees also have the opportunity to affect America's and Israel's future directly when they meet with members of Congress. There were more than 500 meetings with members of Congress on the closing Tuesday of this year's conference. There are already 5,184 people registered for the conference for next year. If you want to help ensure that America always stands with Israel, AIPAC's annual policy conference is the place to be. And I see in the future, if you want to see that the U.S.-Japan relationship is moving forward, this U.S.-Japan Council Conference will be the place to be. AIPAC maintains a political department which closely monitors each congressional member record on activities relating to the U.S.-Israel relationship. AIPAC does not rate or endorse political candidates. However, members of AIPAC are encouraged. Mrs. Inouye, your husband is here.